Hello, my name is Marni Tomasevich-Haran, and my favorite thing is tarot cards.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hi there. Welcome back to Finding Favorites. It is Saturday night, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I am hopeful that you made safe choices this weekend and hung out with your indoor pod, which is what I did. COVID numbers are starting to drop in Illinois, so people making the choice to stay home is working, and that's a relief. Hopefully we can get through this winter with the numbers being ever declining, and as we move forward towards a vaccine for COVID. This week on the podcast, I talk with Marni Haran. Marni was a student. She was a resident assistant at Fort Lewis College when I was a resident director. I was in Durango, Colorado for 3 years in between college and Chicago. It was a really magical time. It was a really hard time for me. It was when I found out that the career path of college student personnel wasn't actually going to be my career path. But I met wonderful people, and Marni was definitely one of them. She and I both participated in something called Dream Group, which was a group therapy based on Jungian psychology and dream interpretation. That was a really core activity of mine in Durango, along with Drum Circle. And Marni also came to I used to host women's teas when I was a hall director of an all men's residence hall. So I was the only woman living with 150 freshman men students. And so I would host a lot of the young women that I knew on campus would come to my apartment once a month for tea and chat. So Marni and I have stayed in touch over the years. We saw each other about 5 years ago at a reunion, which is hard to believe it was 5 years ago. And on the rare occasion that work took me to Denver, we would try to see each other in person, which is to say we've only seen each other 2 or 3 times since I left Durango, Colorado in 2002. So Marni and I talk about her favorite thing, which is tarot cards. We talk we talk a lot about the history of tarot decks, both modern and not so modern, but maybe not as ancient as I thought, certainly more modern than I thought. That will all make sense as you listen to this episode. We talk about her daily practice using tarot card, what it means. What is the difference between being a deck collector versus somebody who reads cards for people? We run the gamut. Run the gambit. We cover a lot of ground. And it was just a delight to talk to Marni and catch up. You can find her she's on Instagram, mystic.marni. I'll tag her on my Instagram account, and where she shares her deck collections. She shares her daily draw, her knitting, and she follows a ton of tarot card people as well. So, if you're enjoying Finding Favorites, please head over to iTunes or wherever you get this podcast feed and rate and review. According to all the podcasts I listen to, it makes a big difference, and I would really appreciate it. Until we see each other again, stay home, stay safe, wear a mask, and wash your hands. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones. This is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. Today, so here's a little story. A few weeks ago, Instagram's been getting really nosy with a lot of like, you might know this person, you might know this person. And recently it said, you might know Mystic Marni. And I said, Marni's on Instagram, and I didn't know. So I am thrilled to have Marni Horan with me today. How are you, Marni?
Wonderful, Leah. How are you?
I am good. Unlike many of my guests, Marni is not someone I met on the internet. Marni is someone I met when I was working at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado in the last century.
That was a good century.
It was a nice century.
And you had the best Jeep. You had the Jeep Comanche truck, and when you sold it and moved back to Chicago, I was crestfallen and devastated that you would leave that vehicle and leave my state. That is the most beautiful place in the world to live. Colorado
was very beautiful, but it turned out very indoorsy and not made for Colorado. Darn. So I moved to Chicago where we're allowed to be inside.
Well, and being outside is too treacherous. You have to wear like 75 layers of clothes to go out in the summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have a cool museum.
We do have a cool museum. We got a couple good ones.
You do, indeed.
Yeah. So I drove that Jeep Comanche home. I brought it to Chicago. I had it here for a week. And then I sold it to my grandma, Ruby Jean, who turned around and sold it for a profit a week later. Because she was like, this truck has too much power for me. Which it did not have too much power for anyone but my grandma. And then she got herself a nice little Honda hatchback that was her last car, and she loved it.
Poor Jeep, rest in peace.
Yeah. It was I love that Jeep because there was just enough room behind the driver's seat for a copy of Trivial Pursuit. And I would roll up at parties, and I was like, oh, does this game need a round of Trivial Pursuit? Let me go to my car.
Only if it's the Cold War one, Leah.
It's true. I still have it.
I love those old, super old ones, like talking about the world leaders in like the late 70s. Oh my God, I love it.
You have to give the correct answer for 1983 with the countries that existed in 1983.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How has the great pause been for your family?
So luckily my husband has a job that is unstoppable, and they just don't really think that things apply to them because they're greedy male capitalists who have things to do.
Okay.
And that has worked out for me because my family is able to be supported and nurtured by that work that my husband does tirelessly. I did leave my job. It was planned, though. I was going back to school before the COVID hit. Then the COVID hit. Then I really had to quit earlier than I wanted to. But the only problem is the school with the children and what's going to happen. Denver is on the brink of having all kids go back because our numbers are skyrocketing because people. There's that great meme going around. I don't know, someone tweeted it. It was like, I'm going to stop using the term avoid it like a plague because it turns out people don't do that. So they don't. We don't deserve nice. We don't deserve nice things at all.
Yeah.
Like we don't. Like here's life. Here's life. The most beautiful thing we have to offer you. How about you take care of it? How about we don't? How about we do what we want to do because I have rights? All right. Yeah. See all you people in hell. Am I allowed to curse? Is that
yes, you are allowed to curse.
Okay. Because I don't want to curse too much, but I feel like a pointed F word here and there is always fun.
It's all right. My sister has said that nothing has gone too out of bounds for my nephew. So.
And how old are they now? Are they like 16?
Yeah, Henry is 16 and Quinn is, I think he's 11 now.
Oh, they just made us old. Thanks, kids.
So you're back in school.
Back in school to get my master's degree. I've been working with homeless people and severe mentally ill people for a very long time as a grunt. And I avoided the therapy trap for about 14 years. And I avoided the teacher trap, the nurse trap, all of it. The administrator trap, all of it, because It's too treacherous. And the more higher educated you are in that field, the more you're exploited.
Mm-hmm.
And I just refused to do it. So accounting, oh my God. And I started getting into the Enneagram. Have you done your Enneagram? Do you know what that is?
I've heard about it on podcasts, but I haven't done it yet.
Okay, so I was introduced to it by two friends who knew so much about it. I was intrigued. I took the test a couple times, and I'm definitely a 6. So just reading about that and the whole spectrum of personalities and all of these things of like, so it's like, what is your core motivation? And then how that flowers your entire life. So I just really appreciate that as a base of self-knowledge, because it's not about self-improvement at all. It's about self-acceptance and self-knowledge. So you can, right? The more you know. So the more you know, and then you can examine how you're behaving and be like, oh, well, of course, that's just the thing I would do. And I've been doing it this whole time. So I got really fascinated with that. And so I'm a 6, which means I'm a loyalist. So I'm motivated by fear. Oh. And in a healthy way, like when a 6 is healthy, I can let myself understand that the world is plentiful, things are fine. I don't have to have an emergency plan for everything. I don't have to worry about being without. An unhealthy 6 is just worried constantly, like everyone's going to die, everything is going to go wrong that could, and I'll have nothing left. I should stop. I need to buy 2 of everything.
Yeah.
So then just getting to that, it's like accounting fits perfect. I'm going to get my accounting degree. I don't have to be a boss. I don't have to be in therapy and burn myself out getting paid nothing for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
I don't have to, my income will be that of a mediocre white male, which is a lot compared to really overqualified white women.
Yep.
And, not needless to say, people of color and professions and what have you, in this revolution we're seeing again and again and again until we change our life. I'm not trying to be greedy, but I'm trying to go for mediocre white man money, because the six part of me is like, well, if my husband dies, I need an income that will support my child without us having to choose between groceries and electricity at the same time, which is what you make when you're a therapist working at a nonprofit.
Yeah. And
that money caps, like you don't ever make more money unless you write a best-selling book that gets taught in school, which also is a thing I'm not going to do. That's not an aspiration of mine, is be like, I'm going to write the definitive guide of how to work in homelessness.
Right.
Because God knows we've all talked about it. Like, let's write a book about outreach. What is it? What does it mean? What do we do? What's our ethos? What's the practical application? And none of us did it because we're all too burnt out from talking to hopeless cases for 10 years straight. Like, all right, we're done. And when I mean hopeless cases, I mean society, not people.
Right. Right. The system.
Systems. All systems.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. So accounting, it keeps me safe. Master's degree, because they told me, they're like, you have a bachelor's, don't waste your time getting another one, just get the master's. And I agreed. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I trust you people I just met 20 minutes ago. Let's do it. Let's hit that shit.
So you're in a full-time master's program.
I am. I'm in the prereq still. I had to do 2 prereqs. So I'm in the prereq still phase, and then I'll be legit master's next fall.
Because what was your undergrad in?
Sociology. Which means all I know how to do is be mad at stuff.
Yeah.
That's it. All the books I read in school are all continually coming into fruition today in this moment on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it just, the long game, the marathon of caring for a society that's hell-bent on destroying itself all day, every day.
Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure it was actually accounting you were going back for.
Yes, the Masters of Accountancy program, which is just it's just a right turn from the MBA. So it's been fun. What I've done so far, I've really enjoyed, especially helping like small businesses do financial planning. That's really cool. I dig that. But, doing work for rich people, like, how do you price a bond? Who cares? They're rich. We're talking to I don't care about billionaires. I don't give a shit how much AT&T is going to have to sell a bond back for because they were dumb. I care how much Rich and Steve need to start their business with 10 grand. what can we do with 10 grand? Like, that's more interesting to me. So I'm still people oriented. I still care about the little guy in this realm. So I'll probably just end up taking a job and doing things for less money than I'm worth. And, doing the women thing that I've been exploited for my whole life. Like, just take care of us for $0. Okay.
But you could also like get a job at an accounting firm or at a big company and then join then volunteer at a nonprofit that helps small businesses.
Yeah, lots of cool
There's
stuff.
lots of options.
There's
lots
so
of
many
paths.
options.
I trick people on by saying, oh, this is like just super chill. We talk about people's favorite things, but also people's favorite things are tearing down capitalism, patriarchy, and systemic racism.
Right. It's like, what would Che Guevara do right now? We're going to do what he would do on our 15th cup of mate by this time of day.
Oh, man. I've got a lot of mate in the kitchen. I don't know if I have the constitution for mate anymore.
Yeah, it's like the first gourd is rough. You got to get to like the fourth gourd. You're like, okay, I think maybe I can handle it and run through this wall. On this episode of What Would Che Do? He would collect tarot cards.
Yes. Beautiful segue, Marni. I didn't invite you on to talk about accounting.
No.
But we will maybe on the other side of your master's, when you know more about it, maybe I'll have you back for my first Denver live show. Let's put that out in the universe.
Assuming we're still alive, I will do it. I'm there.
Yeah. You're here today because when I did find that you were on Instagram, it was with an Instagram handle called Mystic Marni, and you are doing tarot card readings on Instagram.
Yes.
Tell me, one, what are we here to talk about?
We're here to talk about tarot cards and tarot decks.
All right.
Because that's what I collect, and it's my favorite thing right now, and has been since 2016 on my birthday month, September.
All right. When did you get your first deck of tarot cards?
So I got my first deck around September 8th or 9th, because my birthday is September 6th. My best good friend and I, we took the day off. We went and screwed around all day, spent the money. We only had one kid. We each only had one kid at the time, so they were in school. And she wanted to go to a magic shop to get herself a deck because she had just had a reading that blew her mind.
Okay.
And it was this really beautiful deck that started out as a small printing of one person, which has now become a cultural phenomenon in the tarot world. So we were looking for it. And I was like, well, I already had runes. I already had one deck of goddess oracle cards, which I got in Durango, both of those things. And those were my divination tools, just those two items forever for 15 years.
I'm certain I have those goddess cards.
Yes, you probably do. I love them. I still have them. I cherish them. And so she got a deck. And then I was like, well, maybe I could learn too. We could learn together. Okay. So I got my first deck, and then it was off to the races. That shit crazy after that till right now. This is the year I decided I got to quit buying them. They're getting well, and Kickstarter is a major proponent in this decision, and they're terrible. But the money, the money is phenomenal. But I'm going to get too far ahead. So let's back up.
So 4 years ago in your birthday month, you get your first deck.
Yes.
And then you start learning together.
We did.
How did you, through books, through YouTube? Was there a local teacher? How do you learn tarot cards?
All of the above. YouTube is the greatest university on earth. I am forever grateful for YouTube. So found some amazing content on YouTube, watched those videos. I enrolled in a class taught by a woman at one of the magic shops on Colfax Avenue. And that was a 6 to 8 week course. Then there have been thousands of books written about it. since the first book written to study tarot as a divination tool was in, was it like 1783 in France.
Wow.
So it's a very long tradition of study. So you get a couple books, you get a deck, then you find out there's 3 schools of tarot.
Oh.
And then you find out why there's 3 schools of tarot. About there, you could say 4. I'll say 4. There's 4 schools of tarot. Why is this? Because A, B, and C. And then it just snowballs into this insane study of astrology, Kabbalah tree of life, Jewish alphabet,
Yeah.
some Judaism. It's just mostly Kabbalah, not like Torah Judaism. And then you're learning numerology, you're learning alchemy. All of these things are placed upon the structure that is tarot. So it just snowballs into this huge study. And then on the other side of it, it's like, this is tremendous works of art, 78 works of art in your pocket for $20.
Yeah.
And now up to $100, depending on what you're willing to spend. And then there's the business side of it where it's baseball cards. Like, oh, I'll buy this deck now for $20, hoping in 10 years, maybe it will be worth $1,000.
Oh, wow.
Because that is so true. It's a game. It's a financial game. It's a tremendous loss of money unless you have one of those decks, quote unquote, and you're willing to sell it. So it's this metaphor upon a metaphor upon a metaphor, which really all it is a deck of 78 cards to play a game, to gamble, because we're base, disgusting, horrible creatures that just want to thrill and make some cash in the street.
Okay.
On a poker night.
Yeah. Wow. So you start with a local class.
Yes.
And in that class, is she teaching you this history, or is she teaching you more, here's a pattern and here's how to read the card? Like, what does a beginner class look like?
So beginner class looks like they say, okay, now get your Rider-Waite Smith, bring your deck that's a Rider-Waite Smith deck. And the Rider-Waite Smith deck is the deck that you see everywhere. It's the one published by U.S. Games. It's taken over the imagery, besides Tarot de Marseille, like it looks like this, right?
Oh, yep.
Everyone has seen this deck. So that's the deck mostly taught and mostly emanated in the tarot community.
Okay.
And it's set rules of Tree of Life imagery. Each card is associated with an astrological association, a numerical association. So it's this tangled web of educations. And so when you go to this class, you just get a brief overview. It's like, this is what's in the card. What does it mean to you? What is this person doing? What does it mean? So everything is interpreted in a tarot card. The colors, the magic symbolism, especially in alchemy, because alchemy had to be so secret because Christians the Roman Empire ruins everything, basically.
Sure, yeah.
So alchemists had to become super duper secret and write all of their experiments in code.
Yeah.
So there's all these alchemical symbols in there that we use now. We're allowed to use now. And so it's like, well, what is the sun? What does number 13 mean? All of these things. So you spend years and years learning all of these studies, which basically boils down to like a group of 15 white men telling you what the cards mean, because they love the cards so much that they made them magic.
Huh.
So this started in France.
Okay, in the 1780s.
But the first tarot decks were starting to be, the first card decks are starting to be produced in like playing cards, nice 9th century China.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they evolved. Then the suits, like the suits of cards we use, the 52 card deck we use, that has existed for a very, very long time. So that card deck, called the Mamluk card deck, is, crosses Asia, and then it's created in Spain. Then it's created in those symbols like the clubs, the hearts, all these things. It all comes from this Asian deck. But what's strictly European about the tarot deck is the 22 major arcana, which is the fifth suit. It has the fifth suit, the major arcana 22, plus the other 56 cards, which is our 56 card playing card deck.
Oh.
That's the deck that's evolved from China through Asia into Spain and then into Italy. So in Italy, this game called the Trionfi, the trumps, the 22 trumps plus the 56.
Yeah.
That's the game. That's, if you're poor, it's a game of chance and it's illegal. But if you're rich, it's a game of skill and you can do what you want. The Visconti Sforza deck was a deck painted by an artist for this wedding of these two peoples, the Visconti and the Sforzas. So it's just this beautifully painted deck, and that's considered like one of the first tarots. And then you get woodblock printing and this whole history that's in the area of Italy and France, and how all those territories, like what we know is now like Switzerland and this school. So as woodblock printing becomes better, of course, it's a moneymaker. People want to play games.
Yeah.
There's tons of receipts, throughout Italy of people purchasing, like rich people, like they ordered 3 decks of this game from this person.
Yeah.
So there were creators, producers, and then, they become artistic. They become beautiful.
Yeah.
The Tarot de Marseille is the second school. And that's highly published, highly created, like in France. It's called the Tarot of Marseille is a collective, specific kind of deck that eventually just gets standardized into one kind of art form.
Okay.
But it's all these amazing creators, like the woodblock cutters and all these producers and like the makers of ink and paper and cards and the cutters. And it's all of these tarot decks that are surviving like on their giant sheets. They're in museums in France and in Italy, and you can go see them. Like you can go see the Constitution.
Oh, because it would be, you're not making a woodblock for one card. You're making the whole deck is one giant woodblock. Or maybe it's a bunch of them that are like nailed together.
It's like 78 different woodblock cuts, and you're just printing them out. You're stamping and printing, and then they would stamp the color. So some decks are colored specifically like in the line, but some stamps, like the paint, it would be like, a sponge stamp that's shaped like a head, and every head is going to be green. So you just stamp it one by one. So there's these old surviving decks. And now, because tarot is such a business and such a fetish item, it's now not, it's about like it's ridiculous. Like what deck can we find, and then who's recreating it, and how much are you charging, and how are you doing it? And it's very, very amazing what a monster the tarot deck card industry is.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because maybe 2 weeks ago, I interviewed Sean Ellis about historical European martial arts, which is sword stuff, and how in the HEMA community, there are these manuscripts, this guy named Talhofer, which was like his catalog of inventions and like home weaponry that you might buy. And I guess, right, like growing up, we're taught about the Gutenberg press and how it changed the printing of the Bible. And we learn all this stuff in such a Christian context. And you look at illuminated manuscripts that are of the Bible, or maybe Shakespeare, but most, right? And you don't, there's so little of historical art or written works, that like ledgers are so important. Diaries are important.
Oh yeah. Diaries, receipts, anything you can find.
Yeah. And certainly a tarot card never came up in an art history class or a world history class as something that was produced, traded. That's fascinating.
It really is. And there's a company, a small place in Milan, Italy called Il Meneghello, and they reproduce historical decks. And they're the owner, Christina Dorsini, like she's a PhD. She got her PhD in that style of art. Like it all came from that area. Not at all, but so much of it came from that area and those regions and those territories. So she became educated in tarot and then bought this place. So their decks are historically accurate. Like they know exactly when and where, if they can find any and all evidence, when and where these produced, what year, who was it, who was running the place, who was in charge, who created the woodblock. It is unbelievable. And then you can go buy these amazing reproductions, for $40.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. And they tried hard to emanate, like the paper is better, of course, but just emanating what was a shortcoming in the woodblock process of that time is now canon. Right.
Yeah.
So like to see how we change history to suit ourselves. So there's this imperfection in an eyeball and in like an arm position because something didn't get cut out or something that just didn't get sanded down. Boom, that's in history. Okay, that's the only way to do it now.
Right.
But it was because then the woodblock just was cut strangely or poorly time once.
Yep.
And one deck. Now it has to be in that reproduction or it's not real, quote unquote.
Right.
It's like how people get mad when Yoda became a CGI character instead of a puppet. And George Lucas was like, it's a fictional character. Like, why is Yoda as a puppet versus Yoda as CGI have more weight or less weight as reality? So
yeah.
The tarot community is an amazing place to be.
So at what point does it go from being a game of chance, a game of skill, depending on your economic level, to divination? Or is it secretly divination the whole time?
No. So there was a lot of divination happening. It wasn't like the Romani peoples have been reading the playing cards as divinatory for a long time.
Okay.
And so there were, and all these like occult, like the study of occults is not new. It's just that these guys who put all this stuff within the tarot, they made parallels. They're like the 22 trumps. Oh my God, there's 22 letters in the Jewish alphabet and Hebrew alphabet. And there's 22 paths on the tree of life. Obviously, these cards are Kabbalah. Okay. And then, the guy before that, he's like, and also during this time, like in the 1700s France, like these guys were obsessed with Egypt.
Yep.
Obsessed with the god Thoth, however it's pronounced. It's pronounced like 5 different ways. I say Thoth, Thoth. So the god Thoth gave this, like one of these guys who created the tarot, who created all this stuff with tarot, he made up history. He's like, these 22 major arcana cards are from Egypt, and the Egyptians gave it to the popes who kept it secret knowledge, and then gave it to us in the 14th century. So obvious, and like everyone's like, that sounds legit. That shit's real. So that was real history for a very long time. Okay, so these white Protestant French dudes are taking all these cultures that aren't theirs.
Right.
They're not, and they don't believe in Kabbalah. They're not Egyptian. They know nothing. So, in today's context, it's just taking all of these histories and stories and making it your own because you want it to be. Yeah. Not because it's real at all.
It's like cultural appropriation by excellent marketers.
Tarot is cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
So beginning from, like I said, our base instinct to get off, to gamble, to win a couple bucks and have a holler. Big deal. Yeah. And now it's $1 billion industry. I don't know if it's billions, it's millions.
I suspect it is $1 billion industry.
Yeah, I wonder what the numbers are on that. because I don't know if any of these publishing houses today are publicly traded. These guys took all these cultures, and then this Rider-Waite deck, like I told you, the class you learn.
Yeah.
Those guys were a group of like white, rich Rosicrucians who studied occult. They knew about the French guys, the French school of tarot cards.
Yeah.
And it's still, at that point, it's just a playing card deck, right? Like there's 10 swords on the 10 of swords.
Yeah.
That's no fun. So in 1909, Arthur Edward Waite, who was one of these Rosicrucians studying all these occult, and part of becoming, they're part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Okay, rich white dudes in England, 1887 and 1903.
Yeah.
If you're a W.B. Yeats fan, he was part of the Hermetic Order. So one of these guys, Arthur Edward Waite, and Pamela Coleman Smith created this tarot deck. And when you were in the Hermetic Order, you had to create your own. It was like part of your initiation and part of your understanding of like what you're doing in this order. We're creating magic. We're magicians. This is our magic. This is one of our magic tools. You have to create your own, so you know what everything means. So
your hazing craft project.
Yes.
Is to make your own set of tarot cards.
Make your own set of tarot cards because they organized the tarot cards. So by this time, a normal deck of cards, playing cards, get slapped with numerology, astrology, planet, like the seven astrological planets. They just shoehorned these 78 cards into all of these systems that don't match. Astrology doesn't match Kabbalah. Alchemy doesn't match all of these things. So they just shoehorned it in. And we're like, all right. They had arguments about what order where should we start the order? So it's just these guys who decided, they just decided. This is all made up. This is all fucking made up. It's so amazing.
400 years, a live journal becoming, or like a Tumblr community or a TikTok community, like in 400 years becoming something.
Right. And
I wasn't expecting so much fraternity in the story of tarot.
Yeah, and it's just so few dudes, right? So the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So in 1909, this deck gets published. That's the thing. It gets published by the writer publishers. Okay. That's why it's called the Rider-Waite Smith.
Okay.
Pamela, and the thing that's revolutionary about this deck is that she painted the pictures. She gave the pips, the Five of Swords, a story. There's people in it. There's something happening. There's Five of Swords.
Yeah.
Okay. Which now you can read this like you read a comic. You lay out your cards and it's a comic story. You're like, oh my God, I see what's happening here. Instead of just looking at a card with 5 swords on it.
Okay.
Which is boring. Okay. So this deck of cards revolutionized tarot. It becomes mass produced. Of course, it's published. Pamela Coleman Smith dies penniless. She got paid jack shit to do it. She was part of the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. She has her own amazing story without this deck. And none of the originals remain. Like all we have, I think historically is just like, I don't know where I don't remember why they have the whole deck. I haven't really looked into that, but so this deck gets published and it just helps create more magical stuff because also like this huge, like spiritualism goes in and out of fad all the time.
Yep.
And it was just a time when spiritualism was in. It's like, what is this? What are ghosts? How do we contact the dead? All these things, right? With your tarot cards. This is how to read with the tarot cards. So they produced the deck. They produced a book explaining all the symbols.
Yeah.
And then it's just been in our life in the Western world ever since. It started getting published. That deck, the Rider-Waite Smith deck, started getting published in the United States greatly, I think in like 1950. 1959, Rider-Waite Smith widespread American distribution.
Okay.
And then in 1971, Stuart Kaplan, owner of U.S. Game Systems, acquires the rights to it from where, I don't know, probably like the Rider Company. So he chokeholds this art. He's the only one allowed to publish it and makes $1 billion off of one woman, Pamela Coleman Smith, because she was the artist.
Wow.
And she, like I said, she died penniless.
So
go ahead.
Oh, so U.S. Games would have, they acquired it before the copyright ran out, or they like restarted the copyright? Something.
I don't know, but the copyright's about to run out. Like he can't copyright it anymore. He can't say anything about it anymore. It's about to be done. So now on like game crafter sites and Etsy and all this, everyone's using this art and reinterpreting it and making tons of money. Like it's just going to make money forever.
Right.
This intellectual piece of art. So
public
Stuart
domain.
Kaplan,
that's what it's called.
Public
Going
domain,
into the public domain.
So Stuart Kaplan made shitloads of money from this one woman because of the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, because of these like 12 dudes are like, no, this is our secret society. We study the occult. We know everything. You people are idiots. And then they squabbled and broke up, of course.
Of course.
And then another member, Aleister Crowley, you may know him. He's he's in pop culture because he was just batshit crazy and out and about and flamboyant.
Yeah.
Versus everyone else who was super subdued and secretive.
Yeah.
So he created his own deck with a woman named Lady Frida Harris.
Okay.
And they worked on it for 5 years.
Wow.
And their correspondence is really fascinating. They were both geniuses. He just was nuts. Like I'd love to know like the forensic psychology on him, because there's tons of evidence they could use. He was published. He wrote all these books.
His letters survive.
He was a prophet. He heard, like he was in Egypt when he received messages from the prophet. He wrote it all down. Their deck was created from her painting. She painted every single one. And they worked on it from 1938 to 1942, but it wasn't published widely until 1969 after they were both dead. So neither of them got to use their own deck. And Lady Frida Harris wasn't an occultist. She didn't give a shit. She was just an amazing artist.
Yeah.
And was interested in Crowley.
Okay.
And
she was like, he'll love me if I do these paintings for him.
They just were weird friends.
Yeah.
Because they were not romantic. They were like weird. They were just strange buddies.
Yeah.
There was no hint. There was no affair. There was nothing like that. It was just a meeting of intellects at the right time in a weird place. Because she was like, it was later in their lives. They weren't young and, they weren't fucking around. He had they weren't anything. They just were probably just, right, the two class wallflowers that met 50 years later.
Yeah.
We're like, dude, we could have been best friends this whole time.
Oh, yeah.
So the Thoth deck is so I know my history has been jumbled and throughout. So the first school is the French school, the Tarot de Marseille.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Then we moved to the English school, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith.
Yep.
Then the third school is the Thoth deck, which is a breakaway from the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn. So it was, 3 members of the Hermetic Order creating 2 separate decks that became cultural phenomenon.
Okay.
And Crowley's is different. Crowley and Harris's deck is different in that he attributes he renames a few of the cards, and then he gives different astrological attributions to a couple of different cards.
Okay.
So his order is different. And I think, and his main focus is the Kabbalistic tree of life, whereas it seems like with the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's more the astrology.
Yeah.
But like the astrology and the planets and all those things were given to give each card a personality.
Yeah.
It's like when I laid down the 5 of Swords, what does it mean? What does it mean? So some astrologers will read their cards just based on the astrology because they have it memorized.
Yeah.
Some people, some readers, it's like, okay, in the Kabbalah, this card is in between Keter and Bina, and what does that mean?
Uh-huh.
Right? Things like that. So it's just really fascinating. And then people like me, I don't give a shit about any of that. I love learning about it. I love astrology. I love alchemy. Definitely studying the tarot deck made me realize I'm an alchemist intellectually. Not in practice, sadly, because I don't have a lab. I don't have a lab to turn my lead into gold, but I want one, right? I want to stay up all night.
Future state.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just reading about the history of alchemists. Oh my God, what a history. So when you're learning the tarot, you're learning all of these phenomenal things because, and someone said this like in a blog post or just something I read, is that the 78 cards of tarot are this immensely powerfully strong scaffolding to put anything on it. It will take anything. So right now what the tarot community is placing upon the scaffold of tarot is social revolution.
Okay.
In that who is making these decks, who is buying them, how much should they cost, what should they be made of?
Yeah.
Why is this person telling a Black woman's story and has no fucking business doing so?
Okay.
Why aren't more Black women making, all these things like where are the decks made for and by gay people? Where are the decks made for and by, Latina people and the Latin culture and all these things. So all these things are creeping out in Kickstarter. So all these amazing artists are coming out with these phenomenal decks, and they're $60 a pop now.
Right.
That's insane. When I started, it was $40. Now it's 60 in 4 years. It's inflated from 40 to 60. And also as consumers, we become total dicks. It's like, I demand 400 GSM cardstock, and I demand matte finish, and I demand full bleed. And then you get to the point where you're like, we're ruining our own shit.
Yeah.
We are ruining our own beautiful sacred thing that came in a box with crappy cardstock and shiny print, and we worship it. Like, why do we have to get worse as consumers?
Right.
Demanding these horrible things, driving up our own prices and making demands on creators that is unnecessary.
Yeah. How many decks are you up to?
I don't know. I'm over 200, I'm sure.
Oh.
But that's just only tarot. I have other decks, but that's about mid-range for collectors.
Okay.
I mean, I'm like, you're dealing with collectors who started 20 years ago and have thousands because they buy every deck sometimes and keep them. Yeah. So I'm mid-range. I feel like I'm at an appropriate level in my peer group.
So when did it tip over from you from beginner class to I need a couple more decks to collector?
Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I'm also a recovering alcoholic. So I am nervous.
Uh-huh.
The reason I drink is because I need to come down because I'm nervous about everything. So instead of spending my money on beer and cigarettes, I now spend my money on tarot decks.
Yeah.
So when they're $20, you're just like, I'll get that one.
Yeah.
I saw it on my IG.
Yeah.
And the other thing about YouTube is that you're watching everyone's collection deck videos. So you're watching tarot pornography and saying to yourself, I need that deck.
Uh-huh.
Because there's a mermaid on it. And I'm pretty sure I like mermaids. So I'm going to get it. And you do, because there's the fear of missing out. And from all the ways they're coming and going, if you don't get it, then you don't. I missed out on a deck this year and I'm really upset about it. And I'm wondering if I should try and find it. Because someone's going to gouge me and charge me $150 for it. Because it's now out of print and hard to find.
Yeah.
And that's the bread and butter of the thing you don't want. You're like, as long as I have it, then I can choose what I do with it.
Right.
But now that I can't have it, I want it and I'll pay.
So of those 200 or so decks that you have, have you read all of them? Or do you have like a dozen that are in high rotation? How do you decide what deck to read from on a given day?
It's all because I can see them and I know where it's like that thing is like, I know where everybody is. I know what shelf they're on. And some decks just call to you because you want the art. You're like, I need to see that art right now.
Yeah.
And then some decks take you by total surprise. Like right now, I've got this deck that came out a few years ago and I never got it. They reprinted it. And it's called the Sluttist Tarot.
Uh-huh.
And it's all women, and it's transgender women, and it's strippers, and it's prostitutes, and it's sluts. And I can't take my hands off it. Like, I'm not even going to stop using it because I love it so much right now. But sometimes you just want your black and whites. Sometimes you want your fantasy ones. Like sometimes like the Tarot de Marseille, I love that so much that I just want that. So I can just look at a card that has 10 swords on it.
Yeah. Versus
the Rider-Waite-Smith 10 of Swords, which is a guy laying dead, stabbed in his back with 10 swords. Like maybe I don't need to see dead guys today. The COVID rates are murdering everybody right now. So how about I look at my flower deck?
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe I should look at my like whimsical, really colorful, cheerful deck. So I think the reason why collectors have so many is because that's how many moods you have. That's how many emotions you have. It's how many people, and especially if you become the reader for people, you got to have decks that speak to everybody.
Yeah.
You got to have decks with Black people. You got to have decks with Asian folks in it. You got to have decks with cats.
Yep. I
have the greatest cat decks, which I never thought I would want.
Uh-huh.
And then I get one cat deck. I'm like, well, I need them all now, obviously. There's like, I need every cat deck there is because they're so cute and wholesome. I need them.
Yeah. Are there artists who come out, like, are there people, do you have multiple decks by single artists? Is that something people do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you anticipate it because they tell you when they're going to start pre-sailing, or they tell you they're kickstarting again. So if a deck creator is extremely successful with one, they will make more.
Okay.
Because they're already artists. They already love the tarot a lot of times. Some don't. Some people have never read tarot before and make amazing tarot decks.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where they are at. So yes. And then there's the question of Lenormand decks and playing card decks. And those, so an artist will make one deck of all three kinds of divination.
Oh.
And you want it because you like their first deck so much that you already know you're going to like the art. So you get the second deck or then the third deck.
Yeah.
Totally. That's totally a thing. Absolutely. So you're collecting artists. And another thing about this community is that they're accessible. Like if you just DM an artist and ask a legit question and not be a douche, they'll answer you. They'll comment on your video. So to go along with your Instagram, you have to have a YouTube channel. So there's this huge YouTube channel community of folks, and they're reviewing decks and they're making social commentary about decks. They're modifying their decks. They're cutting them up and marking them up. And there's this whole, it's like, and there's tarot collectors who are also teachers, and they teach you how to read with a certain system, and they teach you how to do a spread or whatever is happening. So now the huge thing is social justice. So there was this huge Zoom meeting organized by one person in the community, and she had all the quote unquote big names, and they discussed representation and racism and cultural appropriation.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. So they're on it, dude. They are on. And I should say we, but I can't say we because I'm not in that conversation out and loud and proud on my own YouTube.
Yeah.
Or on my my Instagram. Like I comment on it, but I still feel like I have so much to learn that I'm like, I will comment, but I'm not going to launch a discussion because I won't be able to hold it.
Yeah.
Because there are better people doing it much better than I am. And I'm listening to those people.
Yeah. Tell
me what's right. And I believe them most of the time.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. And so you want, and talking about your own racism and dismantling all that, and then just applying that to the scaffold of tarot.
Yeah.
So making sure
fascinating.
making sure you're buying from Black artists and encouraging artists of color, gay artists, transgender, all these things. Like there's a deck called the Slow Holler that was made by an art collective in the South, and they identify as either Southern or queer or both. And they made this amazing deck. They only made 1,000 copies and it's gone forever.
Yeah.
And people want that deck so bad because it represents all of those things. Being Southern, being gay. Specific, like on purpose.
Yeah.
Doing it to represent this community, lift it up, give it a voice. Here's your deck.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
I'm Facebook friends with a woman who is Black and Jewish and a sorceress in Chicago, and she's often getting new decks. And so I see on her Facebook a lot of the decks by Black women artists and Black female identified artists. So like I kind of had a sense that there was some social justice stuff happening.
Yeah, a ton.
Just based on what she was ordering, what she was looking for. But it's not something I've ever talked to her about. So
talk to her about it.
Yeah.
It's a really great conversation. I really, and see now the tarot reader and collector in me wants to know what her Facebook is because I want to know what deck she's using. Because when you find out someone reads tarot, you're like, oh, what's your deck? Yeah. And also involving myself in, listening to the hoodoo community, hoodoo and voodoo and conjure community.
Yeah.
The phenomenal history and practices that is given our country that we'll never talk about in school. Like I would have never learned about that had I not stumbled into esoteric and occultism because of tarot. And now I get to, so I follow all of these folks practicing conjure. Denver has a conjure ball that's quite pricey, but it's like a 3-day weekend. You pay this ticket and you get to sit in on classes, you get materials, you get to learn all this stuff. Like the conjure practitioners in the Denver area all come together to teach us about it. And so my goal is to save up money for that. If we have, it's not going to happen this year, of course, but
right
in the years to come, if it stays alive, I definitely want to go and just learn all that because that's a whole other aspect of the knowledge of your country. Like, so we had slaves.
Yeah.
We definitely had slaves. And this is what slavery, like the people that survived slavery gave to us. Like they gave an entire region fucking magic and survival and deep culture, and it's part of the thread of our country. Like we need to know about that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got this little tiny tarot deck in 2016, and it just has led me on this phenomenal intellectual tour of what, and that's why I think people are cool. I don't really I'm an outgoing person. I love, my life dream would be to have dinner with all my friends every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Just have this giant cafeteria, eat with all my friends, go to bed. Every day. It keeps us alive, keeps us young. But then also humanity as a whole is just a shithole. Like, really, you guys? This is what we came up with? Because this is terrible.
Yeah.
But the religious practices and spiritual practices and belief systems make me like people again. It's like, you thought of that? That is amazing. You did, we have been thinking of this forever. Since we crawled out of the water, we have been thinking and looking up and wondering what's happening. And I love that about us. And I just love that. So I approach it from this aspect, this is so made up. We have made all of this up and it is beautiful. It is amazing. It all came from, because we're awake again. We did. Yep. We woke up alive again, damn it. and now I'm going to be awake for 12 hours. What am I going to do?
What are you going to do with the time?
What am I going to do with this 12 hours before I get tired and hungry again? Here you go.
Yeah. So you said something earlier that was, if you were going to become a people reader, reader for the peoples. Reader for the peoples.
Yeah.
So do you read for yourself and not for other people, or how does tarot, outside of collecting, how does tarot fit into your day?
So I read for myself. I pull a card every day. And it's always a simple question, like, what should I watch out for? I also use the pendulum. So sometimes I'll pick 2 cards and I'll let the pendulum pick which card is my card for the day.
Okay.
And I'll get a clear yes and no. And then so that's where the intellectual part kicks in. Like, okay, I got the Hermit today. What does that mean? Well, it means A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. And you think about that throughout your day. So it can be your mantra. It could just be your self-reflection. It could just be a journal entry, just something in your mind is kind of offset your mind. Well, I got the Hermit today. How would the Hermit deal with this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And it can go all the ways you want it to. So I do that every day. I write it down. I keep a tally. So I know exactly what my stalker card was for every year that I've been reading.
Wait, what? You know what your stalker card?
Your stalker card. So your stalker card is the card that just keeps coming up.
Okay.
It just keeps popping up. It just keeps popping up for a period of time. And you notice it. You're like,
yeah,
I just got the 5 of Swords. And then you get it again like 2 days later. You're like, I just got this. And it just keeps popping up. So, and then it just depends on what you do with it. Why do I keep getting the 5 of Swords? And then you look it up. You look it up and see what it means in the deck that you pulled it from. Then you look it up in your book. Then you associate all the things and you just internalize that. And so when you do that, sometimes your stalker card just goes away. Like, I did it. It taught me the lesson. Like, I'm not going to keep getting this card.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's why I like to keep the tally, is because I want to know what my stalker card ended up being at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I tally every single card that I pull for myself. And sometimes I'll do a big spread if I have a big question, and I just make sure all those cards get tallied. Like, I do a big spread for my birthday, do a big spread for the beginning of the year. And if I just am ruminating on something that's really terrible, I'll do a spread.
Okay.
To get more insight. And like, I have a specific deck for that, because also in the tarot world is the shadow work.
Okay.
So you're looking at the dark side of yourself and asking yourself, why? Why am I jealous of that?
Uh-huh.
Why am I raging at this thing?
Yeah.
In the psychology world, it's your adverse childhood experiences, right? It's like, how did my trauma affect me to this day?
Yeah.
And in the alcoholics world, you're looking at your patterns and being like, why am I being such a dick again? Why? So the cards often lend people a gateway to that, just a little open door.
Yeah.
So you can contemplate it. And more often than not, you're matched straight up. If you want the cards to speak to you, they will. If you don't, they won't. Then you can just disregard it. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
It's just cards.
Yeah.
It's just pictures. But also in the tarot community, the work of Carl Jung, famous psychiatrist, because he was all about the archetypes and the collective conscious.
Yeah.
Collective conscious or unconscious? I forget. So the archetypes and the collective is highly relatable to the tarot world. So he's like our one, and he mentioned tarot like one time once. He was not a tarot reader, but his theories go hand in hand with what tarot is today. It's archetypes, it's continuing stories, it's looking within, it's knowing that, the maiden archetype goes back to me and my mom and my grandma and everything, and goes forward. And what does that mean? How is that applicable today with this card on this emotion on this day?
Yeah.
So we've got Carl Jung on our side. We've got psychology now.
Yeah.
Science. So yeah. So that's in the tarot community, is your shadow work.
Okay.
And using it for looking at your dark side. Because Carl Jung says the only way we can help our own selves is to look at our dark side so we can understand the dark side in others.
Yeah.
And we're not just constantly, it's like, you're evil. No, you're not evil. You're sick. You need help. Like, what's happening? How can I help you? Because I got stabbed in the back 57 times. You got stabbed in the back once. I should help you.
Yeah.
Because I know why. And you don't, but I'm going to help you know why that's happening, right? So it's supposed to create unity. So that's also in the tarot community. So everyone's mad at love and light. I send you love and light. Oh, that's bullshit. I mean, love and light's part of it, but
Right.
also it's like, let's talk about the darkness. Like we have to. That's why we're looking at cards, not because everything is fucking fine. Nothing's fine. Like what's not fine is why I'm looking at the cards.
Yeah.
How to get through my not fine.
I volunteer for a group called Answering the Call, and it's a 5-week leadership program, 2 hours a week for 5 weeks for military veterans and like AmeriCorps alumni, city year alumni who are trying to answer the call to public service.
Okay.
And in week 1, we do a 5-minute solo writing that is writing down your leadership mission. So like my personal mission is to blank. And in week 2, their homework is to do their shadow mission, which is if you didn't bring your light into the world, if you didn't live your mission, what would you look like? And it's to show people who are aspiring politicians and civil leaders that the opposite of what they want to bring in the world is also inside of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's fascinating because really what we have today in American leadership is a lot of people living like my shadow mission.
Sure.
Right. Which is bringing what I think is the worst to bear. And so it's fascinating to me because we do the leadership mission is 5 minutes in class because people can write that so fast. And then the shadow mission is take home homework because it is very hard to actually put pen to paper and say, if I don't bring my light into the world, here's what happens. And to admit that if you're not doing the work in the world, then these evil or shadow things are what comes to bear.
Right. And that's why I was really grateful that I was an alcoholic by the time I found the tarot, because I think I wouldn't understand like what that was.
Yeah.
Like taking personal accountability of what a shithole you are.
Yeah.
But, like in the 5th step of Alcoholics Anonymous, you admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing that with your sponsor, you're writing all this down. You're doing your inventory. Mm-hmm. This is what I did. This is what happened. And like when you get rolling on it, you really get a lot out. You really do. Like when you put it as a pointed focus, and then that you're going to tell someone, so you get it out of yourself. And then that person is going to tell you, oh yeah, I did all that stuff too.
Yeah.
By this simple exercise of recognition and confession, you can like yourself more and realize also you're not alone. So I like that I did my 12 steps before the tarot, because now I can do my 12 steps in the tarot, right? Another thing I can put on the scaffolding of tarot is my 12 steps.
Yeah.
Which is good. And then, well, I don't know if it's good or bad. I believe that it's good.
Yeah.
But in my own spiritual practice, but you do. So right now the tarot community is doing all of our shadow work about our racism, our discrimination, and our ignorance. Like I just didn't know because no one made me know, because I live in the whitest part of Whiteville that the whites ever fucking whited, and that's happened. I'm still guilty of that. Despite being college educated, I mean, I'm still just, in this little Whiteville area with very few folks of color. And now that I'm not home, and now that I can't go out in the world, I can't interact with folks of color.
Right.
The closest thing I can do is my social media, where I'm interacting with people on purpose because of tarot decks. Yeah. Because we both love this thing.
Yep.
And now I can at least send you a message and comment on your thing, being like, man, this taught me so much. Thank you. Yeah. I'm so glad you wrote this thing because it's helping me. Yeah. So that's what we can do, right? Like my rule of social media is Facebook is the friends and family you don't like at all. Twitter is the society you don't like at all. And then Instagram is like your soulmate best friends. Yeah. that you've been needing to meet your whole life.
Yep.
And you probably still will never meet them, but when they post, you know that you'll be okay. Like, okay, this person understands me.
Yep.
So that's why my Instagram is only tarot, getting to know our neighbors and friends in a different way. So like I've gotten a couple pen pals from my Instagram that just makes me so happy. I started a hashtag all my decks 2019 and I cataloged all my tarot decks and gave a review of all of my decks.
Yeah.
And that burned me out, man. That burned me out. It was hundreds of decks. It was so much writing, so much photography. It was this huge endeavor, and it got a lot of people did their own deck collections.
Yeah.
And it just was really cool to just like, why do you like it? Here's my favorite card. This is how it looks. I hate the way it shuffles.
Is there, if you were to partner with an artist, what type of style or themed deck would you want to make?
So I would make a black and white.
Okay.
Just because I like that personally. It reads like black and white to me, it just hits home. There's no joking around.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite decks is called The Moon Void by Stephanie Capone. And it's an autobiographical deck. So she relates every card to a moment in her own life.
Yeah.
And it's centered around her, and not in this vain way, but just in a way it's like, this is my life, boom. She also did a black and white, and I just really love that. So I would love more autobiographical decks.
Yeah.
Instead of, because she still held on to the structure of the Rider-Waite-Smith, and the Golden Dawn structure. She held on to that. But I love that she just put her life out there and her likeness. So yeah. I would love to do a black and white deck. My friend Jeff at work, he refuses to do it. And I'm so mad at him. And I'll tell him, I'll be like, you know what, Jeff? Mary White created the Mary L Tarot in 10 years, and she painted every single painting, and she got married and divorced and had 3 kids. So you have no excuse, Jeff. You have time. And he refuses to do a tarot deck with me. And his art is fucking phenomenal. He painted me a 3 of Cups.
Uh-huh.
And I made him a scarf, and it is so beautiful. So I would just want to do like just a kind of an ethereal black and white deck with nature. Not necessarily animals, but not a ton of people.
Yeah.
That's what I would love to do one day. But that's the thing, is I would just be the director of the deck. I would not be the artist. So what would I name it? Then you got to ask yourself, what would you name your tarot deck? Would you name it after yourself and just call it the Haran Tarot, like so many people do, which is fine.
Yeah.
One of my favorite decks is called the Holly Simple Tarot by a woman named Holly.
Yeah.
And it's like one of my favorite decks of all time. She's going to like re-release her deck as the 5-year anniversary. And I'm like, well, of course I'm going to buy that.
Right.
Because I need one printed 5 years ago and I need one printed now, because that's how life works.
Right.
As a tarot collector, because I love her art.
Yeah.
And I want her to keep making it. And she's solo, she's an entrepreneur. So yeah, I would do a black and white autobiographical. And I've been to some cool cities, so it would be really cool because there would be Colorado, Utah, and New Orleans.
Yeah.
In this deck, a little bit of Iowa, Glenwood Springs, like all these amazing places would be in my deck too. So have a couple of cards from Nolans in there, and that would be dope.
Yeah, from Tulane.
Yeah. No, I was at University of New Orleans.
Oh.
And then, of course, Durango, Fort Lewis. Yep. And then, now there'd have to be a little playground in it because I've got this little kid now. Yeah. It'd be a big old pregnancy card in there somewhere. Whatever.
An accounting card.
Tattoos, since I love tattoos. So jewelry. My turquoise ring would have to be like my hand with my favorite turquoise ring would have to be in there somewhere. The desert of Loa, Utah. I mean, so it would be a autobiographical places type of places and things kind of deck. Ooh, good idea. Now that I'm verbalizing it, Leah, I'm like, damn, I need to get on that.
I look forward to buying it to be my first tarot deck. I went to a holiday party a few years ago that had like 6 people doing different types of divination.
Mm-hmm.
And you would just go and pick like what side. Did you want palm reading, tarot?
Yeah.
I think I went to the palm reader, and you would just go and get in line, and the bartenders would come by, or, like the waitstaff would walk down in between and make sure that you were fed and you were drinking. And it was like even fun to wait. And it was really a very fun party.
Yeah, I love it. I did my friend's wedding, the Halloween themed wedding, and they were Gothic vampires from 18th century. That was the best wedding I've ever been to. I took like 5 of my Halloween themed decks. Holy shit. People were open. They were ready. Those cards read like a dream. Even with skeptical people, I was like, nope. See what's happening in this card? This is the advice card. This is what you need to do. And they just stare at you. They're like, oh my God. And like people kept coming back. It was amazing. So when you have nights like that, you're like, oh dude, I could read tarot forever for people.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you just get those dud days. So like anything, right? Like with stand-up or anything, you just get a group. You're like, nope, it's not. And you know the first person, you're like, it's not the day. I should just put the cards away because it's not. They're all too skeptical. No one's really ready. No one's open. It's just going to be a battle every reading. They're like, well, what about this? Well, that's not true. You're like, all right, we're done. Like I'm out. I can't read if you're not going to let the cards be read. Like I can't do it. So reading for the public is very interesting. And the best advice I heard on reading cards is from this woman. She teaches all sorts of divination, has all these online classes, and I just love her. And she's like, when you're reading cards, read the cards. You're not a psychiatrist. You're not a best friend. You're no one's mother. You're a card reader.
Yeah.
You have to know your cards, know your system, and know your spread, and read the cards on your spread. That's it. So there's all these people who are like, I only positive only. It's like, no, bitch. You got the Tower and the Ten of Swords about your boyfriend. It's over, honey. Let it go. Or whatever. Like, let it go. It doesn't matter. So, but people want to hear, well, what you could do is you could just try a little harder to understand that AB, no. My cards don't lie, babe. You lie.
Right.
I lie. You lie. The cards do not lie.
Right.
So I love that. It's just it's a conduit. It's like smoking cigarettes. You'll talk to someone. If you're a smoker, you can strike up conversation, right, with a smoker.
Yeah.
Like with cards, it's just a way to strike up a conversation, and people tell you their life stories.
Oh, I bet.
Life stories.
Great. Is there anything else about tarot that I didn't ask that you were like, I must tell Leah this thing?
If you want to raise your social consciousness, the tarot community right now is helping do that.
Great.
You can purchase from Black women, purchase from Black men, purchase from gay folks, purchase from trans folks who are selling, buy readings from trans folks, and, use your money for use money for small business. Please use money for, our brothers and sisters suffering right now, and they can make money off a tarot reading. Buy a tarot reading. Buy a deck if you can afford it from their site. And I would invite anybody listening, if you are a mega tarot nerd, and I'm incorrect, please correct me. Mystic.Marni at Instagram or whatever, or no, at mystic.Marni on Instagram. That's my main focus, is my tarot Insta. I'll answer any questions about any deck. I'll send you pictures. Like, I love interacting with folks. And if I'm incorrect, correct me. If I'm correct, I don't know, go get yourself a tarot's deck. And another thing too, don't learn anything. Just get a tarot deck and use the art and contact your intuition. That's it. Whatever the color in the picture says to you on the card, that's what the card means. not because it's in the 5th decan of Aquarius associated with the air,
Yeah.
all that. It's like, whatever it means, it means. And it's a living, breathing thing, and it can help you understand your own living, breathing apparatus, right? That is your life. If you choose to accept it.
So the deck people should start with is the deck that they start with.
Yes, the deck that you like the pictures of, the deck that you heard about, the deck that is affordable. There's this old thing, like, you can't purchase your own deck; it has to be given to you. That is indeed not true. That was probably true because no one had a tarot deck, and no one, like, one person you knew how to get them or whatever.
Right.
So I would say there's the internet.
Yeah.
And you can have any deck you want.
Yes.
There's a woman, I will shout this out. There's a woman on Instagram and YouTube called Dark Star Tarot.
Okay.
And she does 5-minute flip throughs of tarot decks. She has a lot. Her video, she has a ton. So if you're looking for it, if you want to know what every card looks like to see if you want to buy it or not buy it, look for Dark Star Tarot, because she has saved me and squandered me hundreds of dollars because of her flip throughs.
Yeah.
Because when you go buy a deck, you can't open it. It's sealed in a plastic inside the box. So you can't flip through and say, oh no, this is ugly. And you can't return them. You can only trade them after that.
Yeah.
Unless you get it through Amazon. But if you go to your local store, they won't let you return an open tarot deck.
Of course.
Because that's how life works.
Yeah.
So Dark Star Tarot, she has flip throughs of all the decks, man. Like, all of them. Get on YouTube for the flip throughs. Find something that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then just get any book. Get any book and you'll read it, and it'll just whatever. It's just cards. Make your own oracle deck.
Great. Well, Marni, this has been, I love you so much. And it's been so good to talk to you.
I know, you too. I miss you in my life, Leah.
Miss you too.
You're like the person that's like, I'm going to do that. And then you do it. And I love that. You're a rare person in that way. Like, I think I'm going to just like start a whole thing, and you go, and a day later you're like, Leah, what are you doing? Oh, I started the whole thing. It's fine. I just love that. So thank you for letting me be on your podcast.
Yeah.
This is great.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.